with apologies for being 8 minutes late and wishing you all a good evening. Here we are to apply our minds to another very interesting topic, conflict. Krishnaji always asked us or asks us, why do you live in conflict? And many a time we do not understand his question. Why is he asking us, why do we live in conflict? As though we have a choice, as though one morning we decide, okay, today I will not live in conflict. Is it so easy? For us to live in conflict has been the way. It has been the way. Sometimes a question like that, why do you live in conflict, seems to be as difficult to understand as if somebody asks, why do you breathe all the time? Do we have a choice in breathing? We go on breathing. We can't stop breathing. Alas, that is the sad plight of human life. We are so used to living in conflict that conflict appears as natural to us as breathing. Though in a corner of our mind, we know, I should get out of this conflict. I don't want this conflict. There is a lot of resistance to conflict. Husband and wife have conflict. Parents and children have conflict. Known or unknown to the society, gurus and disciples have conflict. Developed countries and developing countries have conflict, and why? Developed countries have major conflicts between themselves also. Oh my God, where is no conflict in human life? To do or not to do, to be or not to be. Everywhere we have a conflict. What is conflict? We are torn apart between two things. Therefore, it is compared with a tug of war sometimes. Our life has been a constant and endless tug of war. And now let me come to the crux of the matter. In fact, as I reflected a little just before the session opened, it seemed to me that by and large the whole world thinks of conflict as something going on between bad and good. And generally, we tend to believe we are on the good side and they are on the bad side. Why doesn't somebody teach a lesson to them and allow us to do whatever we are doing or we want to do? Once in a while, we do realize honestly that we are on the wrong side and others are on the right side. We are very uncomfortable with that realization. However, we think, okay, there is something wrong with them, therefore there is conflict. Once in a while, there is something wrong with us, therefore there is some conflict. And either way, generally we think in a situation of conflict, we must do something to change the situation, to change others, to change ourselves, or to change the law, to change the social norms, or I must change my religion, I must go away to another country, something or the other. And here comes, and I share a quote from Krishnaji, which is so different, a totally different way of seeing. And that's what the first part of this evening's topic touches upon, the genesis of conflict. By genesis, we mean how does conflict come into being? Genesis is birth. Genesis is how something arises. I believe in the Bible there is a book of Genesis. I don't know whether in the New Testament or the Old Testament. The Old Testament is not exactly the Bible. That is what Moses received. New Testament, as most of you know, is what Jesus gave. So Moses gave the Old Testament, having received it from God. Jesus gave the New Testament, and with my limited knowledge of Christianity, I suppose the New Testament is generally referred to as the Bible. So in one of them, there is the book of Genesis. Who was at the beginning? From him who came. After that, who was born? Then who was born? Then who was born? Probably this Genesis is found in all religions, in Sanatana Dharma, the Indian spiritual tradition also. Somewhere it is said Devi was present at the beginning, from that Devi goddess. Somewhere else it was Brahma who created, then from Brahma X came, from X Y came, from Y Z came, Z came. Anyway, let me not go too much into explaining the word Genesis. Genesis means how it comes into being. Come on. Why or how does the conflict come into being? And that's the quote I'm going to share now. I myself felt startled when I read that a week ago. J. Krishnamurti says there is conflict when you want to change something, you want to change to something else. You get a feeling, I am not disciplined. I must become disciplined. I am not clean. I must become clean. I am not moral. I must become moral. I am not rich. I must become rich. I am not clever. I have all the talent. I have all the intelligence. But I am not street smart. I am not clever. I am very naive. I am very simple. Whereas these guys who don't even have half as much intelligence as I have are very smart people. I want to be clever. I want to be, you know, like even Raj Kapoor. My friend Harshad sometimes quotes old Hindi songs. I appreciate it. And today let me quote. There is that very popular line. सब कुछ सीखा हमने न सीखी होशियारी. Hoshiyari is cleverness. I learned everything, but when will I learn to be clever? In this world, it seems, unless we are clever, we cannot get going. So, all this is the masala that I put on the pristine, pure teaching of J. Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti says, when you want to change yourself, I guess, into something else, I want to become like that great singer. I want to become like that great writer. I had an uncle for whom, in those days, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan was like a role model. And he was dreaming of becoming like a Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, as good a speaker as Radhakrishnan. And this uncle of mine, who held a very good position in Jawaharlal Nehru University as the editor of the Journal of the International School, as editor of the Journal of School of International Studies, was indeed quite good in writing, in speaking, because his model was Radhakrishnan. He dreamt of speaking like Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. And to conclude this memoir, once he heard me speak a little on an Upanishad in New Delhi, as way back as 1993, and he was very happy. So I personally feel I was not so good, I did not give such a good lecture. But later on, he hugged me and patted me. You spoke. I wish I had gone into Vedanta like you. So, Mr. Hebbar, that uncle of mine, wanted to change himself into a second S. Radhakrishnan, who was the second president of the Republic of India too, as you know. So all of us want to change. And Krishnamurti's quote is highly thought provoking. The moment you want to change to something else, there is conflict. No wonder a large number of people just say, we tried to read Krishnamurti, but we did not understand. A lot of my relatives keep away from Krishnamurti. When I say to them my involvement in Krishnamurti teachings, they look at me, with a puzzled look. They say, we appreciate you are going to Gita, Upanishad, Vedanta. We'll enjoy when you chant some Sanskrit shloka. But we don't know why, why of all things you went to J. Krishnamurti. Because, alas, their mind somehow is not receptive to a plain truth. In fact, having raised that matter, let me say, J. Krishnamurti is not complex at all. But he speaks such simple truths, and people are not open to listening to simple truths. They want something bombastic. They want something dramatic. They want to hear something where, from being a Lilliputian, you become, what is that other one? Gargantuan or somebody. Gulliver, and there are two stories. The sailor called Gulliver once finds himself in a land, where everybody is so tiny. Maybe his tallest man in in that island was 1 foot tall. That's one part of the story. Then Gulliver travels. Another time, Gulliver again meets with some shipwreck or something. He is washed away to the shore of another land where everybody is probably 25, 30 feet tall, and he is a Lilliputian there. So, we say, oh, I lost it, right. So, that change, something miraculous, something dramatic, impresses us. Okay, I think I dragged on too much, saying I am sharing a quote with you, but probably I again and again went a little away from the quote itself. What is the quote? The quote is Krishnaji's words bearing on this evening's topic is, there is conflict when you want to change to something else. And its simplicity is this. In trying to change, alas, like my uncle had the role model of Radha Krishnan, and he would listen to Radha Krishnan. He personally listened to S. Radha Krishnan on occasions. He had the privilege of listening directly to Radha Krishnan. He had the pleasure of listening several times, I think, directly to Swami Ranganathananda, who was another role model for him. Ranganathananda, the president of Ramakrishna Mission during certain years, was also known to be an excellent speaker, a writer, an intellectual, and stood straight and spoke. So Mr. Hebbar was fascinated. I loved and regarded Hebbar a lot in one sense. But now, when you want to become Radha Krishnan, when you want to become Swami Ranganathananda, or you want to become Swami Vivekananda, want to stand and say, sisters and brothers of America, wait a minute. Have you understood what you are? Have you understood who you are? Have you understood the complexes from which you are suffering? Have you really understood the self rejection that is affecting you? Generally, in 999 out of 1,000 cases, the answer is no. None of us has the patience to understand what we are going through. But we want to become like Amitabh Bachchan. because we see him on the screen always super confident. Amitabh Bachchan handles everything so well. So we feel, when will I become like Amitabh Bachchan? Big B, they say, Big B of Mumbai. So whether it is Tendulkar of cricket, Bachchan of cinema, or Abraham Lincoln of politics, our eyes are upon something to become, and our eyes are not on what is. Conflict is the unavoidable outcome when we do not pay attention to what is, and what is includes ideas, notions, concepts, certain evaluations that we have of ourselves. Alas, all the time we try to work harder and harder and harder. On one hand, we are very lazy people, many of us, but we dream of working very hard. We hear that there was somebody or there is somebody who sleeps only 5 hours out of 24 hours. 19 hours, 20 hours, she is seen to be alert. When will I become like her? So, we want to work harder, but we don't have the either patience, you call it, or the insight with regard to it, that all that is okay, you want to work harder, put in more hours into some noble tasks and projects, etc. Okay, that's fine. But why don't you sit for even 3 minutes quietly? Why don't you sit at your balcony looking out? And even though you look out in one sense, why don't you look at your thoughts, your anger, your deep disappointment, your self rejection? It would not be an exaggeration to say that human sorrow to a large extent is not because society has rejected us, our husband or wife or son or daughter or teacher or boss or people working under us have rejected us. Our sorrow is because our mind rejects ourselves. Our own mind says, hey, you are not okay. When will you become okay? Hey, do this, do that. Hey, get up early. Hey, don't miss your yoga. Hey, don't miss your walk. Hey, don't miss your meditation. Don't miss your prayer. Hey, hey. Mind goes on saying, and the noise of our own mind is the first problem. Our missing yoga or missing walking or not, all those things. They are okay, they are a problem on a certain level. Certainly, one should not sleep too much, one should not talk too much. Certainly, one should not. There's a long list of should nots, which in a sense we agree. But major problem is we don't know how to understand our own psychology, the movement of the self. Therefore, I have touched upon Genesis. In a few words, I'll try to touch upon implications. Genesis is, once more, when there is no attention to what is, conflict is bound to arise. When we are so obsessed with wanting to change ourselves to something, then there is conflict. That's how conflict arises. But what are its implications? That's also a very interesting thing. When you and I live in conflict, you know, I think somewhere there is an expression in some language. Somebody got very tired exchanging fisticuffs. Mushti prahara, they call it. Exchanging fisticuffs. What is exchanging fisticuffs? You rain blows on somebody, that person rains blows on you. Dishum, 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 dishum. and both sides are exhausted. That's fine. But now it is said there was a man who got exhausted by exchanging fisticuffs with air, by exchanging mushti prahara with winds, with nothing. Like that, when we live in conflict, we are getting exhausted, tired by fighting with a concept of who we are, which is nothing but the self. The self is engaged in a battle with itself. The self is the accuser. The self is the accused. The self makes allegations against the self. What's all going on? There's a Mahabharata going on inside yourself. You don't have real Kauravas fighting with you, nor are you Pandavas, but through the play of thought, you become Pandavas at times and the Kauravas are hitting you, and you become Kauravas at times and Pandavas are hitting you. Alas, this is a battle of thoughts with thoughts. Thought is the defender, thought is the offender, thought is everything. And in thought, in the noise that thought creates, in the heat that thought generates, in the light that is born in this exchange of blows, alas, you are exhausted. The implications of living in conflict is a tremendous dissipation of energy, tremendous dissipation of all that is vital in us over something that actually is false. There is no ghost in your room, but you are raining blows in all directions. You get up and hit in this direction, thinking there is a ghost there. Then, thinking that there's a ghost this side, you heard some sound this side, hit some blows that side. Will you not get exhausted? Likewise, the implications are number one, energy dissipation. Number two, which is not different from number one, the implication of living in conflict is love takes a backseat. We have our qualifications, we have our social position, we have a lot of respectability, we are invited by people, by organizations, institutions, relatives, friends. When we can enter somewhere, some of us are received with respect, all that is fine. But we live a life where our heart has no love. Our heart has gone dry. Our heart has become very insensitive. As we get more rich, as we get more powerful, as we become more well known, alas, the love in our heart diminishes. For a lot of energy is spent in safeguarding our own position, fame, name, bank balance, and trying to prove to somebody who we are, alas. So the implications, the outcome or what happens following living in conflict is very serious. When we look at all this, we begin to appreciate Krishnaji asking us. At one place he says, don't live in conflict. Another place he says, I guess recently a book came out with that title. Don't make a problem of anything. We are highly qualified, highly skilled in making a problem out of everything. We marry and marriage becomes a problem. Some of us don't marry and our bachelorhood becomes a problem. Some of us get children, that's a problem. Some of us don't get children and that's a problem. Everywhere, Krishnaji noticed how human beings make a problem of everything. And again, that expression or that saying goes above the head of a lot of people. What does it mean? Don't make a problem of anything. We don't make a problem of anything, but everything becomes a problem. We don't want. As he's telling us, don't make a problem of everything, as though we have a choice about it. You know, someone who doesn't get the right angle of view would think of a lot of Krishnamurti's teachings as not very pertinent. I don't make a problem of anything, but it's my wife who is making a problem for me. You know, we are good at accusing the wife or the son or the boss or the husband. So, without going long, let me conclude saying living in conflict is the natural outcome of our being carried away by some fancy, by some ideal, by some concept, failing to take a break and notice whatever there is. The implications of living in conflict are we have moved away. We move away a lot from a natural being, the fragrance of simple being. We move away, and that's a tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harshad sir, would you please like to comment on this, please? Harshad sir.
Are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji. This conflict happens due to duality. Like as you said, Swamiji, that what we are, that is one thing, and what we like to be, that is something else. So there is a conflict within oneself. And whenever there are, I feel that the real source of conflict is thinking. And if there is a thinking going on, it is all right. But from thinking, when this sense of I or me comes, and then from that I, it comes the sense of you. So there are two things, and these both are created by our mind only, me and you. So this is the real source. If we are alone, very silent, mind is very, very awake, alert, there are no problems. But, and in that awareness, even if thinking comes, it doesn't create problem. But when there is no awareness, then from the thinking comes what Krishnamurti would call thinker, the sense of I or me. And then this thinker tries to change thought. So there is a conflict between thinker and thought, or it can be expressed in many ways. And Krishnaji has expressed the conflict between the analyzer and the analyzed, or the observer and the observed. So when this conflict manifests in our daily life with people around, and then that becomes a big problem. Conflict is the big problem even within the family, and then that conflict drains away our energy. And even if we don't do anything, no work, we can feel tired because our mind is chattering a lot. And also, as Swamiji said, conflict is between being what we are and becoming what we would like to be. So this has a very, very wide implication in human life, because we see that the countries are fighting in the name of nationality, like America and China, or India and Pakistan and Palestine and Israel, and because of also different religions in the case of India and Pakistan. If they both were Hindu, probably they would not be fighting, but because the religion is different, same thing with Arab and Jews, different religion, and so on. So conflict exists in almost all human beings, and it may be possible for a human being once in a while when our mind is perfectly in tune and not thinking and purely aware, walking alone, and there are no sense of I or me also, there is no conflict. But if you are walking in a park and somebody comes, a friend, and then you start talking and discussing, then sometimes many conflicts come because we have a different ideas and opinions. And sometimes even in a dialogue where people are discussing Krishnamurti, there are many conflicts arise because one person understands Krishnamurti in one way and the other person he he objects to that view and he says no, Krishnamurti means this, and the other person says no, Krishnamurti means that. So I remember that when there was a meeting of many countries representative of people who were uh, associated with Krishnamurti teachings, and they all had met at Brookwood Park in England, and they were from different countries, but they were all propagating Krishnamurti's teachings. And one person among that meeting, he said that whenever I talk about Krishnamurti with somebody who doesn't know anything about Krishnamurti, everything goes all right. But when he talks with somebody who also knows about Krishnamurti, then there are kind of a conflict happens because different people are understanding Krishnamurti in a different way. And but what Krishnamurti says, he says, don't understand me. There is nothing to understand about Krishnamurti. We have to understand our own self. And only when we are able to watch the conflict arising within us, then there is a possibility that watching, and that means that awareness. When that awareness is not there, we can get carried away by our own ideas and opinion, and even though it may be about Krishnamurti. So one has to really experiment initially by being alone, watching how these thoughts are arising. Because so many thoughts during the daytime, maybe 70,000 thoughts may be arising, and we may be able to watch only very, very few. And our mind just goes from one thought to another thought mechanically, and that is how our mind is working. But we are not able to see when one thought changes into another thought. And to see that, how the mind is moving from one to the other, it requires this awareness. So when Krishnamurti says, watch your own thought, then how does one watch one's thought? If it is one thought watching another thought, then there is a conflict. Because one thought, which is this sense of me, which is a very strong thought, and he says, I don't want anger, and so separates himself from the anger. So there is already a conflict there, duality. So only when there is this choiceless awareness which can see clearly how thoughts are moving. That means when anger is arising, seeing that anger is arising, when it is arising, not later on, not saying that I should not have been angry after already have become angry, but the ability to see thoughts and feelings as they are. And only when that awareness comes naturally, because you can't try to be aware, because that will create another conflict, because you are not aware and you want to be aware. So only when naturally, out of curiosity, out of watching, without any motivation, when that sense of awareness, which is not thinking and feeling, when that comes, then problems are solved. Then we don't make anything into a problem. Even if somebody insult us, we can listen. Just like Buddha, somebody came and started abusing Buddha, and Buddha was listening quietly. Buddha had no problem with listening without any reaction. But that person who was abusing, he had lots of problems. And Buddha understood that this man is speaking, abusing out of his own problems. So Buddha had a compassion and love for that man. So when a person is able to listen, even the abuse, with a sense of listening quietly, with affection, maybe that can change other human beings. And so Buddha was able to change even Angulimal, who was very, very violent man. And first time he met a person like Buddha, and even in few minutes, there was a transformation. So only I think that kind of awareness, a choiceless, motiveless, effortless awareness, when it comes, then we really understand what Krishnamurti means by love, by beauty. And then maybe there is a possibility of changing other people, as long as we have not changed, as long as there is no transformation within us, we cannot change no matter how much we talk about it. Because each human being is affected by many, many factors, many, many forces which we don't know. But when there is a communion between one person who is like a teacher and the other human being who is very, very intensely listening, and there is a communion between the teacher and the student, then there is possibility of transformation happens. But it can happen even without a teacher if a person is able to watch, look at his own mind and learning by observing one's own self. And I learned from Krishnamurti. But once I begin to observe my own mind, then I don't need Krishnamurti to tell me uh, what is happening. Because what is happening is in me. Krishnamurti doesn't know what is happening in me. But I can see. So one can have the direct understanding only when a person is able to observe his own mind without the thinker, only thoughts, something is going on, and there is no person who is trying to change. And that's why Krishnaji calls it choiceless awareness. So that is the real key to be free from the conflicts within ourselves and with other human beings. And but this kind of understanding at a personal level, one can be free from the conflict. But India and Pakistan, at a national level, there is no possibility as long because there are so many millions of people, highly conditioned, are involved. And so it is not possible to change India, Pakistan, America, Russia, and to talk about that kind of, it's a waste of time. To, to stop war is a waste of time. Only we can stop the war going on within us. And then maybe we can able to do something around us, not at the national level or international level. So it's a very important topic, and I see there is a lot of conflict going on in the Indian Parliament, where people are shouting the members of Parliament. They're not listening to the Prime Minister, making a lot of noise. How these people can really do any good work for the people of India? So conflict is everywhere, in the family, in the Parliament, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Pradeep ji, please unmute
Hmm.
and
I'm audible, friends.
yeah,
Yes.
very much
Yes.
audible.
Good evening, friends. I have listened to Swamiji's as well as Harshad Bhai's what he spoke about conflict. I will take it little differently, in the sense because genesis of conflict. Who is in conflict? Naturally, my little self, a limited self, with aspirations and desires. My little self with aspirations and desires. Now, if we have understood clearly that what I am is my relationship with things and people around me, and if I have understood that I am not individual, I am the world, I have understood these things too very clearly, then now what is and what should be is a conflict between what is and what should be. What I am, what I can be, or why there's a difference in what I can be and what I should be. You see, what is and what should be or what can be need not necessarily be bad. It can be very creative also. You see, but if what should be is beyond my resources and capabilities or potential, then only it will have bad implications. Psychologically, definitely implication is a sheer waste of time if I'm trying to be someone, just seeing so-called others, their position, their prestige, their power. And if you want to be that, just by seeing and comparing, then the implications are bound to be bad. Essentially, it relates to myself and my perceptions that may be full of insights. So, how I see this world, that matters. So, there are both the aspects of what should be. If I'm exploring my potential as myself relating to the world, people, and things around, then a jungle can become a Brockwood Park. Everything is in me and my potential and my resources. If it is within that limited, then what should be, not necessarily, because once we use this word should, then there is some sort of force on that. Rather, it should be what can I be, what can I do, and improve a lot all around me. So this should be, if you call it should be, it will become slightly different and little forceful and aggressive. So that way, this is how I take it. The conflict arises when you try something beyond your capabilities and resources. Otherwise, it is wonderful because the whole thing is relationship. My psyche is not my in that individually. It is related to what Harshad Bhai was talking about communion. Communion definitely it can be between, JK talked about it. It can be between two friends, not necessarily teacher and the talk. The only thing is whether our inquiry is of the same intensity or passion. And we are not trying to overpower each other. Both of us are trying to explore, means not knowing and finding some common ground. So that way, no conflict, no problem. So if we take it that way, then everything becomes a conflict. Otherwise, if I start with myself, knowing my potentials and knowing myself, the better I know myself, the better will be my living around. So no conflicts. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is all what I have to say right now, unless until something else comes during the session. I may not. Thank you, friends. Thank you.
Prasad, sir. Prasad, please unmute yourself.
Namaste, sir. Conflict is a very important theme. There is interpersonal conflict. There is intrapersonal conflict. There is international conflict. There is intranational conflict. So there is conflict at every level, at the individual level and at the societal level and the national level. Various causes, but mostly, as Harshadji has said, it is because of the sense of duality. You think you are separate from the other guy, and you think your welfare, your prosperity, your success, it all depends on yourself. And they are important for you. Even if it is at the expense of the society or the other guy, you want to be successful. And that creates conflict. So far as intrapersonal, that is conflict within you, is concerned, that is because, as Swamiji has said, that is because you are not happy with what is. You want this what is to be converted into what should be. That is, you are a bad speaker, as he gave the example of his uncle trying to be like Dr. Radhakrishnan. So you have a role model. You want to be that role model. You are not happy with yourself. So that creates a conflict. You have a goal for yourself. You are not happy with what is, so far as you are concerned. So that creates, when you have a goal, you are not happy. You are in conflict. And conflict arises when you don't see what is, or you see it with the blinkers of the past. That is, You don't see it as it is. You see it with the eyes of the past, with the eyes of tradition, or your past, your memories. You are not looking at what is without a reference to the past or to tradition or your memories. You don't see what is as it is. You want to convert what is into what should be. So this tumultuous experience gives rise to conflict. And at the interpersonal level, when yourself comes into conflict with the self of the other guy, when two leaders, political leaders, are fighting, it means they may think they are fighting for their respective principles. I fight for my principle, and the opponent also is fighting for his principles. But behind their fights, there is their self, normal. Nobody fights with simple altruism. Now we will find an interesting fight between Kamala Harris and Trump. Each one will have his own or her own self. And that creates conflict. Between nations also. My nation is great. And I want my nation to succeed at the expense of your nation. So that duality, as Harshadji has said, is at the root of conflict. I am different from the other. That we represent humanity. That sense is missing in all of us. And that naturally creates conflict. Harshadji has said one thing. Normally, we can't influence at the national level. We have no role in the elimination of conflict between nations. That is what he said. But I think Krishnaji thinks you have a role. If you change, society changes, and maybe at the national level also, there can be some influence. Ultimately, it is the human consciousness which has to change. And that change comes, that change starts with you. If you understand the root of conflict and the causes of conflict, then maybe there is some possibility of change even at the national level. Sufficient number of people have to change. Then there will be a takeoff stage. So, in my view, there are two things. Duality, the sense of duality is one thing. And then our not seeing what is without reference to the past, without reference to memory, etc. That is another thing which causes conflict. And of course, as Swamiji has said, the conflict is debilitating. It drains your energy. Krishnaji thinks if you have no conflict, you can put senility at a distance. That is to say, your brain won't become senile easily. So there are so many benefits if we can live without conflict. We have to realize that all those benefits are there and try to understand the causes of conflict. Thank you, sir. Sushilji, I stopped.
May I make a comment? Nobody wants to say anything. I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah,
Sushil,
actually,
there? Oh, okay. Dinesh, yes. Okay, you can speak.
sir, in today's topic, already everything has been covered by Swamiji and Harshad sir, and earlier speakers have also covered. So there may be some repetition, but still I would like to say something on the subject. As per my views, as long as thought is there, as long as thought is there, conflict is there. In one way, it is a natural thing, as thought is a natural thing. As per JK, there is no end to conflict. This is really strange, but at one place he says there is no end to conflict. And it is only through conflict that there can be any growth. So any growth, any development, technological or anything, can be there only if the conflict is there. Because conflict is also ambition, conflict is also your passion for the new development and all that. So there is no advancement, he said. However, a mind in conflict in any form is a distorted mind. That also is said. Conflict is between what has been and what will be. This point has been covered. Thought is the root of conflict. This is also covered. You have to understand the central cause of conflict and sorrow and dissolve it. As per my views, self-knowing can reduce the conflict. It also tells us, if at all improvement is possible, then in which direction or in which matter. So after self-knowing, you can know what are your resources, what is your capacity, capability, and then only you can move in that direction. Because if this has not been done, then you will be unnecessarily comparing with the others, and evaluation will be there, and there is no outcome of that. On the contrary, there will be more conflict. So one has to understand the whole structure of conflict. One has to observe the conflict choicelessly, as Harshad sir has already pointed out. This also means one has to understand whole structure of thought, how thought originates and what it does and what is its right place, etc., etc. So in a way, in my view, JK is suggesting to go beyond the conflict. Let the mind be quiet. This point has also been covered by Harshad Parekh. Let the mind be quiet. As usual, awakening of intelligence is the way to take care of the conflict. In my views, apart from thought, duality, division in nature is also basic cause of conflict. The fragmentation, the division are basic elements of nature. So any end of conflict considering outer world is not possible. Since there is a division, fragmentation in the outer world, if we think that there is a possibility in outside world, it is not possible. Only one has to end it in himself. In himself, he can understand the whole game, and then he can be free from the conflict, provided he becomes that much mature and awakening of intelligence is there, then wisdom is there, and then he can tackle it. But he has to go through it. as the other persons are not that much having understanding and all that. So he has to go through. Thank you.
Pradeep sir.
Pradeep sir is there. Modakji.
He is not
Hello.
responding basically. Yes, continue, sir.
Am I supposed to speak now?
Yes, you have raised your hand.
I have raised my hand, but Harshadji was say something.
Yeah.
Anyway, anyway,
Yes, Pradeepji, you
So
can.
we have to end the conflict. Simply
there is
continue.
no conflict. Yeah. So shall I tell you? Basically, what I understand about conflict is conflict arises basically when one identifies with one of the fragments, either in society or in the parliament or in the warring world, either Ukraine or Russia or Palestinians or Jews. So likewise, my identification creates that duality. Because I'm somehow separated myself and created a conflict for myself. So simple it is. We all can understand, we all see it happening. Otherwise, even when Dinesh said that every thought is a conflict, I don't know what does he mean by that every thought is a conflict. So anyway, this is all what I wanted to say. Harshad bhai, please.
Yeah. I like to say that this similar to this problem of conflict, there is in physics, we have friction. When two parts
Yes.
are moving against each other, it creates friction, and that creates a lot of heat, and there is a waste of energy. So conflict is like a friction. But the other part about friction is that because of friction, we are able to do many things. We are able to walk. Otherwise, we will be sleeping and not walking. We will have no control, and we will be just sliding, without friction. So friction is useful. Similarly, you can say that whenever there is a conflict, it gives an opportunity to us, if we are curious, to go at the root of the conflict, why it arises, when it arises. So it requires a kind of alertness and curiosity to go right to the source from where the problem arises. And some people, like some writers, like Hermann Hesse, they believe, like Hegel, they believe that only through conflict we grow as a human being. So they feel that conflict is necessary, and without conflict, we will just become very lazy and lose a real interest in living a life of relationship. And there are some people, they um, they say that conflict is necessary. Like there's one song, "Tum रूठी रहो, मैं मनाता रहूं, इस अदाओं पे और प्यार आता है." थोड़े शिकवे भी है, कुछ शिकायत भी हो, तो मजा जीने का और भी आता है. So people, they say that conflict is necessary, and there is it's a part of nature. But I think they are not really, they have not gone deeper within themselves to find out from where they just take it for granted that conflict is natural. Wherever there are, because it's a kind of a survival mechanism also. Because of physical survival, sometimes there is a conflict between one animal and the other animal in the forest. And so even for human beings, because of physical survival, for a job, for a promotion, there is a conflict. So, but when a person feels that this conflict is hurting, it is damaging the body and the mind. And when the person feels that, is it, ask a question, is it really possible to be free from this conflict, from this waste of energy? When such a question is very real, genuine question, which makes the mind very silent and looking, then there is a possibility. And when the conflict ends, a real creativity, love, beauty starts in our life. So this is, but very few people are interested in going right at the source, because even to go right to the source, one requires a kind of looking which is not thinking. And so Krishnaji says, this freedom to look at a thought, at the source, it requires a freedom, and that freedom is at the beginning. But I think that freedom can come out of curiosity, out of looking. It may not be there initially, but it may come when a person, that looking inward is helping the person to understand his own self and is able to live with people around without conflict, can see the beauty of that. Then I think one can go deeper and deeper into that. And that is what a truly religious, spiritual life is about, going right at the root, what they call true self. Who are you? That thing. Okay, I will say.
Prasad, sir. Prasad,
Sir,
sir.
I just want to make a small comment. At the interpersonal level, there are occasions when, even if you don't have conflict, the other guy has conflict with you. So what can you do? You don't want you have no expectations, you don't want anything. But the other guy has expectations of you. And so he has conflict with you. There can be occasions like that. You can't avoid conflict in such a situation in our normal life. Then the only thing which you can do is, you can see that you have no conflict with him. I think that is what Buddha did when Angulika or somebody went on blaming him. That is what Krishnamurti did with somebody also. Somebody has recorded it like that. He went on scolding Krishnamurti. But Krishnamurti didn't have any reaction. And that fellow says, it was like hitting an empty bag. There was nothing. There was no resistance coming. So that is the type of behavior or reaction which we can have. That is, you leave down the conflict in you. You remove that. That's all you can do. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Dinesh Waghmare, please unmute and say.
Actually, in my views, this conflict is not that simple matter. I am not giving any reaction. The other fellow is scolding me or hurting me and all that. Fine. Here there is no actual threat to my personality or my living as such. But suppose there is a case of Ukraine and Russia, where there is an actual threat, then what you will do? So this thing is not so simple. Pradeep sir said a thought. How thought can be conflict? Actually, any thought is makes division. Is divisive. So whenever a thought moves, it has got some content, and that content itself becomes duality. It forms its own form, and that form is different from the other. So in nature also you will see there are differences. So seeing the nature, most of the thoughts are just the recording of the names, or we have just done naming and terming in our memory. So that itself creates conflict, because we have already separated them in different names and images and all that. So it itself in a conflict. Whenever any, so this we can say that this conflict is a natural thing. Only thing, there is a unitary energy which is above this, or a dimension which JK says is beyond, is timeless, eternal, and all that. If that is touched, then that can take care of this duality. Otherwise, there is no possibility that this conflict has. The question is not of ending the conflict, but tackling the conflict. In my views, basically, how you tackle the conflict. If you are capable, you are having this capability and all that, you can easily tackle the conflict. So, how you can do that? By getting the intelligence working for you, or intelligence is guiding you and all that. So even at one place, JK said that even you are having conflicts stored in you of so many generations, so many this thing, you are so many years. So even intelligence can help you in a phased manner. That has been said in this thing. I was referring this yesterday, and I found this thing very interesting. Your intelligence can help you in a phased manner, depending on your capability and your personality and all that. So one has to see the matter in a very deeper way. Unless you get that unitary energy, you will not be able to just tackle the conflict. That is very clear. Till that time, you have to manage the conflict. How best you can manage? All the world is trying to manage the same thing. Every person is trying to manage the conflict. So till that time, you have to manage the conflict. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Dinesh. Chidanandji, are you there?
Chidanandji is not there.
Okay. Harshad Parekh sir, do you want to say something?
Yes,
Please.
Dinesh ji said that as long as there is thought, thinking, there is a conflict. But I feel that the thoughts can go on by itself, doesn't create problem. But when out of this thinking, when the thinker, the sense of I or me, my thinking, I want to change my thinking, then conflict starts. Otherwise, thoughts can move. It's like what Krishnaji says, moving with what is, without what should be coming. In that, there is no conflict. Whatever it is there. There is no desire, no thinker to change it. In that, there is no conflict. But when I want to change it, what I am, then there is duality, and then there is a conflict, and there is a waste of energy, all that. And another thing which I want to say that even very highly intellectual people, they have conflict, like Newton, Isaac Newton, and Leibniz. They had a conflict because they both had invented calculus, and there was a controversy about who created, who invented calculus, and they both had done it independently. One person had done it before the other, but it was not published, and so Newton was the first to publish calculus, and so. But then later on, people said Newton was not the inventor of calculus, it was Leibniz, and there was a kind of controversy going on between also Einstein and Niels Bohr. about the interpretation of quantum theory. And so they had some kind of conflict which affected also their relationship with each other. Because when you identify with your view and the other person identifies with his view, and they both feels that they are right, then there's a conflict. And then
Yes.
it affects relationship. So this happens to highly intellectual people also. And only, I would say, truly spiritual, mystical kind of people who are very curious, not to learn about the world outside, but the inner world. They want to really look at the origin of thinking. And if they come to that state of looking without interpreting, without analyzing, then possibility of freedom from conflict exists. Or if there is a conflict arising, they can watch. So one has to be all the time in touch with what is. Then whether it's anger, fear, jealousy, whatever is arising can be seen as it is. And that seeing is the action which dissolves. So it's called a stable equilibrium. That if you are disturbed slightly, then immediately you come back to your stable condition. That is called stable equilibrium. Unstable equilibrium means when somebody disturbs you and you get more and more disturbed and you lose your peace of mind. That is an unstable equilibrium. So this stable equilibrium is possible in this field of psychology, where we can really, even if we are disturbed, we can see quickly and come back to seeing clearly everything. Okay, I have finished.
Dinesh, still you wanted to say something more? Because your hand is
Only,
raised.
only one line I want to say.
Yeah.
Whatever
Say
Harshad
two
sir has
things.
said is, I
Say
agree
two
with it.
things. Say two things.
Okay,
Not one thing.
okay. I don't remember the exact book, whether it is Tradition and Revolution or Exploration in Insight or what. But JK said that why do you bother about chattering of mind? Let it be there. Why do you make problem of it? So this is very interesting. If you are matured enough, then even the chattering cannot create problem for you. So that stage one has to, I think, I don't use the word rich, but you should be matured enough to see this thing. Thank you.
Are you matured enough, Waghmare?
I do not know. I do not know,
शुरू कर
sir.
दिया तुमने सोचिए
I do not know.
Modak, please end it. He doesn't.
I do not know.
Please end it. Please end it. Modak, please end it.